Welcome to the California Newcomer Project Agency Learning and Support Series. This is the second of our webinars, and these are all hosted in collaboration with the California Department of Social Services Refugee Programs Bureau, and really a demonstration of their commitment to supporting agencies and the providers that are working with ORR eligible populations. All of the series that we're doing are really focused on the content and the topics that agencies have requested in prior surveys and conversations and discussions with agency leaders. Today's topic is specifically focused on how to work with clients that are escalated, that are stressed. Maybe you need to give them really bad news. So we're going to talk about that as something that's really relevant to the context that we're in these days. So welcome. It's our second webinar. It's being hosted by Solvera. So hello. We believe that we work all across California and believe that organizational health is key to the success of programs and working with clients, and also believe that this is really a profession, right? We get into it because it's a calling, but this is a profession. And so we're looking forward to working with you and helping upskill. The project mainly has four areas. So there's information gathering, which is how we selected these topics. You're at these webinars. There's also going to be regional in-person trainings. And then you'll hear about this in a little bit. The next webinar is going to be about how you can access more information, providers, you can get on a map, really control your own profiles and things like that. So bringing you ways to find the information you need quickly and easily. I'll pass it over to my colleague, Carissa, who will be leading you through the rest of this webinar. Thanks, everybody.
All right. Thanks, Hannah. So yes, today, just so we are here, we are on our second webinar. You can see that we've already crossed off webinar number 1 that we had on June 26th. That was about maximizing impact through connecting clients to free resources for everyday needs. That webinar, you can access it on supportguide.com. So you can, if you weren't able to attend that first one, don't worry, we have it already, the recording already live for you to watch. Today, we're having our real-time tools for distressed clients. And then on August 21st, Hannah already kind of alluded to this, but we're having a webinar called Find the Right Resource, and we're launching the provider directory on Support Guide, which is going to be an amazing tool that you can use to find the right resource across the whole state of California. And this is great for clients, this is great for service providers, community members. So we would really love to see you there, as we're really excited to show you what we've been able to create. So today, we're doing real-time tools for engaging with distressed clients. We're going to talk about de-escalation and psychological first aid and a little bit more. Just so we're all on the same page, our 2 learning objectives today are to gain an understanding of the core principles of psychological first aid, often referred to as PFA, and how to apply them in immediate client interactions. And then secondly, to enhance our confidence in responding effectively and compassionately to clients experiencing acute distress. So that's what we're going to be going over today. Next slide, Hannah. So some reminders here. We have everyone is on mute currently today. But don't worry, if you have questions, you can put those in the Q&A and we will be responding to those. And any questions that we don't get to, we will respond to via email after the session. We will today be having a lot of Zoom polls pop up on our screen. So we ask that you participate, because participation in the learning and the engagement is going to really help the information get to all of those who are attending. So just giving you a heads up, those anonymous Zoom polls are going to be seen throughout the training today, and we ask for your participation. And again, they are going to be anonymous. We will have a survey at the end of the training. If you came to the first one, it's going to be a similar survey, just so we can gather the information that we need, so we can know what we need to improve, what topics we can be preparing for. Everything that we're doing in these sessions are from what we've learned from the community across California. So we want to continue to keep your feedback at the forefront. And as we mentioned, we will have the recording and the slides and the resources available on Support Guide, and you will receive an email when that stuff is uploaded there. So talking about Zoom polls, we're going to have our first one currently. We'll have about 45 seconds for you to answer. This is for helping us understand who's in the room, who's with us today. So it should have popped up on your screen. It's just 2 questions about where are you located, so we can kind of get an idea. I see people starting to answer. Thank you. About 15 seconds left, and we're getting close to almost 100% of people responding. Amazing. Thank you so much. This is helpful information for us.
All right. Thank you, everybody.
Okay. Thank you for your responses. This is helpful information for us as we gather who is here today. And so thank you for responding in our first Zoom poll. And then finally, real quick, before we go into introducing our guest speaker today, I just want to remind you this is a session for service providers who are in California. So if you are news or media, we kindly ask that you exit the call. And as this is for those who are doing direct engagement with the community across California. All right, so now we are going to be introducing our amazing guest speaker today, who she will soon be taking over and walking us through the content. But our facilitator today is Megan Bailey. She is an MSW MA and is a doctoral candidate at the University at Buffalo of social work. Her research focuses on the well-being of refugee and immigrant communities, particularly youth. She is focused on trauma-informed practices in the institutions and organizations that serve newcomer communities, and in understanding the role of psychosocial supports in supporting well-being. We are so thankful to have her here with us today to walk us through psychological first aid and working with distressed clients. So Megan, before I fully hand it over to you, I'm going to get us set with expectations, and then I'll hand it over for you to give us an overview and walk through all the information. So today, just as we've gone over our learning objectives and the topic, I wanted to make sure that we're all on the same page about what we will be able to cover and what will not be covered by Megan today. She will be covering trauma responses, de-escalation, psychological first aid, and be going over examples. Today, we will not be going over just mental health diagnoses, other response tools, very focused on psychological first aid today. We won't be going over specific disasters and crises or violent situations. So this is, if we'll look over at the topics that are covered, that's what we're doing. Not covered is in the red. So just making sure we're all on the same page for the information today. And then as we learn together, just remember we're going to embrace curiosity. We're going to offer mutual respect to each other. We're going to share feedback. Remember the survey at the end of the webinar. And then we're going to reflect back on our why. Why are we here today? Why are we in the work that we're doing? Everything is coming back to that. So I always like to take a second to remember your why, and then we can jump into the training. So Megan, over to you. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thanks, Carissa. I'm glad to be with you all. As Carissa said, right, today we're covering some common trauma responses, de-escalation, and psychological first aid. So our content will be in 3 sections. First, we'll look broadly at trauma, recognizing those reactions to crisis and the general steps and things to think about when we're looking at de-escalation. Then we'll move into specifics about psychological first aid, or PFA, and we'll wrap up by applying PFA to 2 case studies. Next. Before we dive in, I want to do a quick check-in, right, to get a better idea of everyone's knowledge and experience related to responding to clients in crisis and de-escalation. So if you'll take a minute and just let us know how often you interact with a client in crisis, how confident you feel de-escalating with a client in crisis, And what are some examples of crisis that clients may have faced? So a mix I'm seeing of how often folks are engaging with clients in crisis, a mix in the confidence level as well. I know everyone's in different situations, and so there may be different types of crisis that clients you engage with have faced, or in your immediate context within the community that you're in. There may be some specifics that you see often, or kind of ones that come up every once in a while. Thank you all. I appreciate you sharing.
Wrap up those responses. We'll give you about another few seconds here, Megan. Does that work for you?
That's great.
Excellent. We've got about 81% participation. So thank you, everybody.
All right. So yeah, these responses are really helpful as we move into the rest of our time together, just to know where people are at, and then at the end to kind of reflect on those things. So you can go to the next one. So when we work with clients who may be experiencing a crisis, it's important to be able to recognize reactions to traumatic or distressing events. We know that trauma is not the event itself, but how someone experiences and internalizes an event. Next. So just a quick definition from the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, right? They define trauma as the result of an event, series of events, or set of circumstances that is experienced by an individual as physically or emotionally harmful or life-threatening, and that has lasting adverse effects on the individual's functioning and mental, physical, social, emotional, or spiritual well-being, right? So again, touching on that reality that it's really individualized in how someone experiences something. Next. You can go to the next slide. And so we know not everyone responds to a disaster or crisis in the same way, even to the very same event. So differences could come from cultural norms in responding to crises, belief systems, or developmental stage, right, where they are in life. And so common responses to trauma include those fight, flight, freeze, and fawn. And so the first three you may be the most familiar with, and fawn may be one that you have or have not heard of. But fight is that defensive or combative response. Flight is the fleeing response where we may feel anxious or obsessive. Freeze is a kind of stuck response where we may feel numb or exhausted. And fawn is a people-pleasing or avoiding conflict response where someone may demonstrate a sense of codependence. So these responses are normal, and they're our body's way of helping us survive. But they move us out of our window of tolerance. So if you look kind of on the right side of the screen, right, you can see a visual image of the window of tolerance, right, and where we move when we go into one of those normal trauma responses. So into hyperarousal with fight or flight, or hypoarousal with freeze or fawn. And that window of tolerance is where we feel regulated and able to engage. So when a client is operating from a place of survival, they may be unable to access the rational thinking part of their brain, making conversation and problem solving more difficult. So when we encounter a client who is angry, combative, or anxious, it's important to help them return to their window of tolerance, right, to that place where they feel calm and grounded and able to problem solve. To help people move back to their window of tolerance, we want to be careful not to react in a way that further escalates the situation. Next. So recognizing and managing our own reactions is an important piece of de-escalation. Knowing how you respond to stressful situations, knowing what feelings, thoughts, physical symptoms are telling you that you're moving outside of your own window of tolerance is helpful, right? So that we can get ourselves back to a place where we're grounded and able to regulate our own emotions. If you've ever traveled by plane, you've likely heard a flight attendant say something about the need to put on your own mask before helping others. So in a similar way, right, in order to support a client in crisis, it's important for us to attend to our reactions first, to be in a place where we're regulated and calm so that we can engage with clients and help them return to a space where they're calm as well. So other things that can help us to remain calm include reminding ourselves that the client is operating out of fear. Right? So their reactions, the way that they're demonstrating their behavior or level of their voice, right? Those things are coming out of a place of fear. We also want to suspend judgment and the desire to be right or justified, especially if a client is saying negative things about the services we've provided. It can feel easy, or our natural response maybe to defend the work that we've done, or to remind them of the ways that we've supported them. But as we're working with a client who is not in a space where they're able to problem solve or engage in that more rational thought aspect of our brains, right, then the first priority is just bringing them back to a space where they're calm and grounded. And so putting aside those judgments or the desire to be right or justified in the work that we've done, just to help them come to a place of calm. And then asking for help when you need it, right? We are human and have limitations, and it's good to ask for help. So just some things to keep in mind as we're recognizing and managing our own reactions. Next. Yeah, so I'm like, pardon me, I'd like you to take a minute to think about how you respond to stress and what helps you stay calm or return to a place of calm in the face of a client crisis or a personal crisis, right? And then I want to invite you to share in the poll the questions we have, right? How do you respond to stress? What are some tools and practices that you use to stay calm in the face of client crisis? And just as a reminder, right, this is an anonymous poll, so we won't know who is sharing what. But taking time to reflect on these things can help us individually and help others identify, right, what they may be responding to as stress.
And Megan, I will have the answers for you once we end the poll, and so I can shout out some of the responses at that time for you.
That would be great. Thank you. Yeah, if you think about as you're responding to a personal stress or crisis, just thinking through, yeah, how does your body feel? What changes maybe about your interactions with others? And then what are some ways that help you stay calm? Just a little bit longer, would love some additional, love to hear people's responses.
Go ahead and hit enter, even if you haven't completed your thought, and then we will start reading out some of those. So give you about another 5 seconds. We'll end the poll, and we'll start reading them out. Go ahead, Carissa.
All right. So a lot of people mentioned shutting down when they feel stressed, or compartmentalizing as well. Some things that help people are to do things that help them feel less stressed, like reading a book or just something that gets them out of that like current reality. Also, a lot of people mention taking deep breaths, being aware of their breathing, speaking slower, and deep breaths. It's probably one of the most popular responses. So a lot of people mention shutting down in response to stress and compartmentalizing, and then taking deep breaths and doing something to get them out of that current reality are tools that they've used.
Yeah, thanks, Krista. Thanks for voicing those for folks. And thank you all for sharing. If you weren't sure how to answer these, that's okay. This might be something you want to come back to so that you're able to better support yourself and respond to clients in crisis. Once we've recognized that a client is in distress and have been able to address our own response, right, how can we engage in a way that doesn't escalate their stress? So de-escalation, we want to be calm and compassionate presence through our verbal and nonverbal communication. Verbal communication that utilizes calm, slow speech. I think Carissa someone mentioned like just slowing down, right? We can do that with our speech also. Verbal cues and responses that let them know we hear them, and that we hear not just the sound of their voice, right, but the heart of what they're trying to communicate. We can also communicate a lot non-verbally through a relaxed body posture and stance. Before we even engage with a client facing a crisis, there are a few factors that can help us prepare for de-escalation. So one thing to think about is the different types of crisis clients might face. You all shared or plugged in earlier, right, some of the different types of crises clients might have experienced. And so it might be a natural disaster such as wildfire or flood. It could be something related to policy or something man-made, right? Immigration enforcement, man-made disasters, a shooting or a bombing, right? It could be things like election results, the loss of a person or job or a house, a health diagnosis, the pandemic, right? Car accidents. It could also be things that are happening far away, right? For a lot of your clients, they may have family members still in their country of origin, right? And so when events happen in those spaces, it can also impact and cause distress in the clients we're engaging with here. And so just being aware of the different types of things that might impact the clients that we're working with. And that can impact how you prepare, including the kind of information you want to gather and what resources are available to clients. So another thing to think through is the different modes of interaction, right? How and when might we be engaging with a client? Are you operating within your agency setting or in a community space? Are you reaching out in the aftermath of a crisis that has impacted the whole community, such as a natural disaster or man-made disaster, just to check in with clients? Or has a client come to you after a crisis? Is it a surprise visit, or did you know they were coming in? You may be texting or talking over the phone, right? So the mode of interaction influences whether or not you've had time to gather specific information beforehand, or you need to make a plan with the client and then gather the information and come back together. So we also want to consider our role and agency, right? So what are the boundaries related to time and resources connected to your role? Who would you go to if you need help with de-escalation? What resources are available within your agency that might be helpful to be aware of when you're de-escalating with a client? And what are the boundaries of your agency, right? What are kind of the limitations and natural boundaries of resources you have to offer? Thinking through these things can help you be better prepared for responding to a client in crisis. But it's also important to remember that every situation is different. And because of that, our responses will vary and our success in responding, right, might also vary. So be kind to yourself as you interact with clients. Next. And just before we wrap up this section, I just want to check in and see how many folks already have a personal or organizational level de-escalation plan. So if you'll take 30 seconds and just let us know if you have a plan, personal plan, if your organization has a plan. All right, yeah, thank you. See the responses coming in. It's about 10 more seconds. yeah, a mix of yeses and nos and maybe not sures. Formal plans. Thank you very much for your responses. Yeah, that's helpful to know and just see where people are at as we continue. So yeah, we can go to the next slide. Just as kind of a wrap up for this section of our time together, right? Trauma is not the event itself, but how the event is experienced and internalized, right? And so those common responses, fight, flight, freeze, and fawn, those are normal things. And when a client is operating out of fear, from a place of fear, it can make conversations and problem solving more difficult. But if we remain calm, we can help with that de-escalation process. And then thinking through the different types of crises, modes of interaction, and our personal and organizational roles can all help us prepare to respond to clients in crisis. And then again, right, every situation is different. And because of that, responses will vary as we interact with clients. And so being kind to ourselves as we walk with clients in that de-escalation. Next. So now we're going to move into part 2 and cover information on psychological first aid, which is one tool you can add to your toolbox to help with de-escalation. Next. I want to first acknowledge that there are different iterations of psychological first aid, and you may have experience in or knowledge of one or all of these. We're going to focus on one version from the World Health Organization that I think will be the easiest to share in the time that we have today and will allow you to start implementing right away. We'll also share some additional resources after the training in case you want to do a deeper dive, but right, to better understand where we all are related to knowledge and experience, we just have a short poll. Yeah, so have you heard of PFA? Have you ever used it? Right, seeing that a lot of folks have not heard about it before today. A mix of folks there are some who have used it, some who haven't, some who may not be sure. Great, thank you. Yeah, that's really helpful just as we move forward. Great. Okay. So again, right, there's a mix of knowledge and experience in the room. So as we move forward, I will simply refer to psychological first aid as PFA. And we'll start, right? PFA is a tool used to reduce stress and foster functioning and coping in response to a disaster or crisis. Right, so it is response in the immediate aftermath of a crisis and is focused on those immediate needs. It's flexible and responsive to individual needs and circumstances. It's a tool that can be used with anyone and delivered by anyone, meaning you can begin implementing PFA now, right? You don't have to have a specialized training. PFA is not therapy or professional counseling. It's also not focused on long-term solutions or problem solving. It's not a strict checklist that you have to complete in a specific order, meaning that you won't complete the exact same specific tasks with everyone in the same order. It is, again, also not a tool that can only be used by trained professionals with specific people, right? So it's broadly applicable, able to be used with anyone you're interacting with, and by you starting today. Next. So PFA is based on 5 core principles that are important for promoting functioning and coping in the wake of a disaster. So the first is safety, right? After a disaster or crisis, reestablishing a sense of safety is critical. The second is calm. As we talked about previously, helping clients return to their window of tolerance is important for them to be able to regulate their emotions and engage in problem solving. The third principle is connectedness. Experiencing a disaster or crisis can temporarily disconnect a client from the supports they've relied on in the past. Family, friends, community resources. So it's important to help them reconnect to previous supports or connect to new resources. A fourth principle is self and community efficacy. This speaks to the importance of empowering clients to take an active role in responding to the crisis. And then the fifth principle is hope. Clients may feel hopeless in the aftermath of a crisis. And so supporting clients in ways that tap into the other four principles can help restore a sense of hope. These principles align with trauma-informed care practices, emphasizing client agency and supporting efforts to avoid re-traumatization. These 5 principles inform the PFA action steps and how we think about implementing them. Next. So the PFA action steps are look, listen, and link. So there are 3 L's, right? Look, check for issues related to safety and security, urgent physical needs, and serious distress. And then listen. Engage in active and empathetic listening. Don't rush to reassure a client that everything will be okay or make promises that you can't keep. And then link. Connect clients to information and resources to support them in their response to the crisis. Next. Here is a graphic that may be helpful as we're talking through the action steps in a little more detail. So we'll be on this slide for a little while. The blue section of the circle is focused on the first L, look. As we look, we can care for clients by observing if there are any obvious urgent basic needs, such as physical injuries or clothes that are damaged or wet, such as in the aftermath of like a wildfire or flood. Attending to any immediate needs can help clients feel safe and comfortable. You also want to look for signs of serious distress, emotional responses that are preventing the client from functioning or engaging in conversation. If a client needs to stabilize before they're able to communicate, you may need to walk them through a grounding exercise. You could let them know that grounding is a tool that can help our bodies and minds be calm, and ask them if they would be willing to try it with you. The reality is they may not want to, and that's okay. You can let them know that you will be nearby if they need something or change their mind. If they're willing to try a grounding exercise, then you can lead them through that. One grounding exercise you might use is called 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. It's one that you may have heard of. In this exercise, you name 5 things you can see, 4 things you can touch, 3 things you can hear, and then 1 thing you can taste. And somehow I missed a number in there, but we're using all 5 of our senses to name and identify things in our current environment that help us focus our minds and ground or anchor us in the present. Then as we look, continue in that first L, right? We can help protect clients from additional distress by being aware of any issues of safety, both for the client and for yourself, right? As well as issues of privacy. So if you're in a crowded or noisy environment, you might ask the client if they would like to talk somewhere more private. Then as we move into the yellow section, right, highlighted, that highlights our second L, listen. We can offer comfort to clients by engaging in active and empathetic listening. Remember that it's not about being right. We want to validate that their feelings are normal. We can paraphrase what they've shared, both to confirm that our understanding is accurate and to let them know that we're hearing them. And don't be afraid of silence or just sitting with a client as they calm down. And again, don't rush to reassure a client that everything will be okay or make promises that you can't keep. We can also listen for practical tasks that we may be able to do to support them, such as a place to sit down, getting a bottle of water. So even very basic things can be supportive and helpful in de-escalating a client. The teal portion focuses on our third L, link, where we are connecting a client to information and resources to support them in their response to the crisis. So we can provide information on coping, telling them about the benefit of routines and grounding exercises. We can ask questions that help the client think about and identify what has worked for them in the past when they have needed support. We can follow up on the supports they've identified and help them reconnect to supports by asking them if they're able to re-engage in those practices or reach out to any people who have been supportive. And again, we can also help connect them to new supports. We can educate clients on normal responses to disaster, sharing information about those different responses, right? The fight, flight, freeze, and fawn, and letting them know that their regular routines and behaviors might change in the aftermath of a crisis. In the event of a community disaster, there may also be information related to the event itself that we can provide to clients, such as information about areas impacted by the natural disaster or where to find emergency shelter or other resources or services that a client might need. Some important things to remember when sharing information: only share information that you know to be true. Don't share information that hasn't been confirmed by authorities, especially in those natural disaster or man-made disaster situations. And don't share information about a resource center or service that you haven't verified. You may have heard some overlap, right, as I walked through these action steps, or noticed spaces where you could respond in more than one way. Listening and linking, for example, right? These action steps are not strictly linear. You can shift back and forth as needed to respond to the needs of the client and to the situation that you're working with. And as a critical reminder, right, you're working with clients, when you're working with them, connecting back to those core principles, right? Make a plan with them, not for them. Actively engage them in the process to help restore a sense of self-efficacy and promote empowerment. Next. Right, so, that may have felt like a lot of information. So just as a summary, right, PFA is a tool used to reduce stress and foster functioning and coping, right, in response to a disaster or crisis. It's a tool that can be used by anyone with anyone. Those 5 core principles that are important for promoting functioning and coping are safety, calm, connectedness, self and community efficacy, and hope. And then our 3 L's. Look for obvious issues related to safety and security, urgent physical needs, and serious distress. Listen, practice active and empathetic listening. Link, connect clients to information and resources to support them in their responses to the crisis. Next. Now we've talked about the principles and action steps, we'll move into the third and final portion of our time, practicing together. So next, first we'll walk through one scenario and I'll share my responses using the 3 action steps that look, listen, and link. And then we'll look at a second scenario and we'll use the pull function again and draw on kind of the collective wisdom and knowledge and think through how each of you might respond using the look, listen, and link. So the first case study, right, a client comes to the office unexpectedly. He's visibly upset. His voice is raised. He's pacing the lobby. How might I respond? Next. I take a deep breath to steady my own heart and mind, staying calm. I think about the first L, look. The lobby is busy, so I ask if he would like to move somewhere more private to talk. He agrees, so we move to a sitting area just off the lobby. I know others are nearby if needed. I might ask him if he would like some water, try to remain calm and quiet. I will not tell him to calm down. Next. So after a few minutes, he says, this weekend there was a fire inside the factory where I work, and now it's shut down. I don't know how long it will be closed or if I'll have a job. I don't know what my family is going to do. I'm the only one who was working. How might I respond? I can think about the second L, listen. I can validate his concern. That's a normal response to a difficult situation. I can paraphrase what I've learned, what I've heard. It sounds like you're worried about how this is going to impact your job and your family. I will not tell him that it will be okay, or that I'm sure the factory will reopen soon. I will not promise that I can find him another job. Next. Then he responds, yes, I'm worried because we have a lot of bills. Rent is very expensive, and all 4 of my kids are on summer break, so we're buying a lot more groceries. It's keeping me awake at night. How might I respond? I think about the third L, link. I can let him know that it's common for experiences of stress to disrupt regular routines like sleep. I can ask how he's coped with stress in the past. What's helped you when you have felt worried in the past? I will not tell him that he should have been saving money for emergencies like this. My responses might circle back through the look, listen, link cycle or move back and forth between the steps as needed as we finish our conversation. So remember that PFA is flexible and responsive to the needs of the clients as things emerge during your interaction. For case study 2, right, we'll observe a client in a different context and have the opportunity to hear how each of you might respond using PFA. So case study 2, you're visiting a client at home. The client's child answers the door. The client is crying at the kitchen table. She doesn't respond when you ask her if she's okay. Her youngest 2 are running around and shouting. How might you respond using PFA? What might one look step be? So using the poll, love to hear your feedback on what might one look step be for you. And remember, right, every situation is different. There's no right way. Just thinking about those, the principles and what you might be looking for and what might be kind of those first responses. Take another 15 seconds.
And Megan, again, I'll shout out some responses once we get some in.
And remember, these are anonymous, so if you're not sure but have a guess, full freedom, just throw it out there. All right. Yeah.
All right. So people said how they would first respond, and especially referring back to that first step of look, is observe for signs, like look around, take in the environment, make sure that she is safe, which is a really good response, and take her to a quiet space if she's able. And maybe observing to see if there's any signs that you can immediately see what's causing the crying, and make an observing body language. We had some good responses right there.
Yeah, those are great responses. I think you all really hit on, right, those kind of key things that you're looking for first. Addressing safety, and is there something in the environment that might cause it to be unsafe, both for the client and for yourself, right? Being aware of what's going on in the environment, moving to a quiet space. That might also mean, right, engaging if there's an older child in the space who might be able to take the kiddos to another room so that there's quiet in the kitchen. That could help. Stabilizing. I love the comment about posture, right? How can our own posture reflect some calm for her? You could also try a grounding exercise, right? Really helping her get to a place where she's able to communicate what's going on. And so, yeah, we can move on. Let's imagine that she did a grounding exercise with you, maybe that 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And so after she does some grounding, she shares that her husband was supposed to reunite with their family this month, but because of a recent travel ban, he's no longer able to come. I'm so tired and I feel so alone. So how might you use PFA to respond? There's using both the listen and the link. So add your thoughts to the poll. Let us know what might be some of those steps that you think about or take as you're moving through this interaction with a client.
And thanks, Megan and everybody. We're going to go ahead and enable the chat. And so that way we can see everybody can see the responses as they come in. So go ahead and put your answers here in the chat for about how you might use PFA to support this client at home. Thank you. We see some responses coming in about why she might not be sleeping, listening.
Yeah, if you're thinking about, again, like that listening and linking, yeah, confirming this normal response. Yes, yeah, validating that's normal. Asking about information. Yes. Yeah, I know we're getting close, so I'll keep moving us forward, right? Yes, you can validate, paraphrase. It's okay to just sit with her for a little while, affirming those things that she's feeling as normal, kind of the linking again, right, as someone mentioned about the information, learning about those things, asking maybe who she turns to for support, encouraging reconnection, offering maybe to connect with community members if that's something that she's lacking and wants, information about coping skills, things that might help her moving forward. Yeah, links to resources, just following up on the things that she is concerned about and asking about. So thank you for engaging in that way and sharing your knowledge and experience. Before we wrap up, I want to circle back to the idea of putting our own masks on before we help others, right? As providers and responders, we're not invincible. And so it's, again, important to be aware of how individual interaction or community crisis is impacting you and take care of yourself, right? Using those same principles that you utilize with clients. So taking time to nourish your body, go for a short walk, step away from the crisis, maintain a regular routine for sleep and physical activity, asking for support from your coworkers and supervisors as needed, and utilizing those breathing and grounding exercises. So I know Carissa voiced earlier for folks that lots of people responded that they use breathing exercises to calm down and to return to their own window of tolerance. And so, yeah, breathing exercises can really help us move out of those fight-flight responses, and so finding what works for you and continuing to use those. And then next, just as you step back into your context, remember that PFA is a tool that can be used by anyone with anyone. In that summary, right, you can utilize the 3 L's to help reduce stress and foster functioning and coping. And it's important to be aware of how you're being impacted, right, to take those steps to care for yourself. Just as we wrap up, we have if you want to move us to the polls, just those 3 checkout questions to help us understand and see how the training has been for you and how you're feeling leaving this space. If it's increased your confidence, has it increased your understanding? And if it's impacted your confidence, right? How do you feel de-escalating with a client in crisis? Seeing responses come in. Yeah, thank you. We'll take another 10 seconds. Yeah, thank you for sharing a range of confidence levels, and that's okay. Again, just be kind to yourself as you're practicing and engaging with clients. All right, thank you all so much. Great. Any questions? I know we're close to time, so.
Yeah, we can give like maybe, Hannah, we can give like 2 minutes for any questions since we do. Is the chat still open, or do we want them to use the Q&A function,
I
Hannah?
would request that folks use the Q&A function. That just helps us not lose track of one of the questions kind of in the scroll of the chat. So if you have questions, go ahead and put them in there. Also remember, so I'm going to talk for just a moment, jot them down. Remember, you have the option to ask an anonymous question there as well. So if you're like, ooh, feel a little nervous, don't want others to know I don't know this, but want to ask it, you're safe. It's okay. You can do that, and we'll respond to them. Also remember, as you're percolating with some of this and kind of thinking through some of it, or as you come up with experiences, you have the option in the feedback survey that we'll send out to ask additional questions, maybe once more of the content has kind of been able to sink in with you. I do want to note, while we're kind of waiting for some of these questions to come in, is that what was really interesting in the beginning surveys was that we saw from those first couple polls where we were asking about like, hey, are you familiar with PFA? Does your agency have a kind of response plan that you might know about? Over 75% of folks in the room today said, no, I don't know what it is, or I only know just like I'm somewhat familiar, like I've heard the name, but I don't know much else. Or rather, and about 75% of respondents also said, listen, if my agency has a kind of de-escalation plan or training, I don't know about it, or I haven't taken it. And that's really helpful information for us. So really, thank you for taking the time to engage with us. That helps us know where to go next in some of our future trainings. I do see a question has come in here. Thank you. It's, what if it's more emergent than that? Like the client has just been on the phone and their family is pinned down by gunfire. All I can think of doing is trying to comfort. So Megan, this question really focusing at a little bit more of like a immediate situation that they're talking with. So talking about the case studies, we see here, what if the client has just been on the phone and their family is in active physical danger?
That's a great question. I think it's a little bit twofold, right? One is thinking through, okay, what can I do for the client that I'm working with specifically? And the other part of that is if you're thinking about what is my responsibility or role in support for the family who's actively in crisis, right? So that, or under gunfire, right? So you may be thinking about both of those things or trying to figure out, okay, what's my role or support here? For the client who you're talking to, right? I think that is where just validating that normal response from however they're responding to that interaction with their family. And so sometimes we see with clients, right, that it's a numb, like very like, this is what's happening, like violence and gunfire are normalized. And so the response we hear from them or in their voice might not be what we anticipate. And so just validating where they're at in that, and also identifying like what are they asking of you. I think in those situations can be challenging. And Hannah, Krista, I would be interested to hear what you think. So I think with PFA, right, you're trying to address the client who's immediately with you. And so what can you do to help them to return to a window of tolerance and be able to engage in that rational problem solving, for them to be able to engage and respond to their family members in a way that that is able to come from a rational thought process and not operating out of a sense of fear.
Yeah, I agreed with you. I think the best thing is to try to move back into that window of tolerance, understanding it may take quite some time. And so, assuming you called your client, not just to chat, right? We don't do that. We've got like forms that need signed, places that need to go, appointments that need to happen. And so going, you know what? Based on where that person is, we might need to reschedule that. Because even if we were to get them to that appointment or get them into the office or to whatever it is, they're not going to be in a place where they're able to receive whatever good thing it is that you have engaged with them to provide. And so making sure that we're remembering that kind of flexibility as well. So really just seeing de-escalation being kind of the number one element there. We've got one more question that we'll answer here before we kind of wrap up. It says, I understand that if we are not sure to make promises, but sometimes considering diversity and cultural context, in order to start communication and keep the client engaged, we need to start with, well, we'll be okay, and some positive talk, right? So, Megan, can you respond to kind of how PFA might be applied in different cultural contexts, and if there's a norm around assurance first, how might you engage that?
Yeah, that's again another great question. I think the PFA kind of standard is not making those promises, and so in a cultural context, I think where assurances or positive reassurances are important or critical to like a first step, then I would think about, are there ways that you can provide positive assurance that is not a promise, either relying on like asking them to think about, okay, what are the supports, if there's a belief system of supports or something that they lean into, then asking the client, okay, what are some of those positive assuring things that have helped you in the past, and having them meditate on those maybe as a way to move into those conversations, or reflecting on, are there other cultural key points that you might could tap into that would be a helpful on-ramp that's not a promise. Does that make sense? Is that like, so you're not making a promise about something that you can do or that everything will be okay, right? But are there other positive things that you can affirm, maybe about their strengths, or right, things that you've recognized in them that are another way that you can start from a positive framework, that don't make a promise to them about future or about how things will turn out. Is that helpful?
Yeah, thank you, Megan. And it sounds like there's a lot of energy and interest in continuing these conversations and really digging in with like, okay, but what phrase can I use here, right? Like what are the specific ways? So in addition to what we had in those case studies, we are at time. And so Chris, I'll pass back to you to bring us through the end, and then note in the chat over here, I'll also link that feedback survey and it'll come out live as well. So Carissa, back to you for references and resources.
Yeah, so Megan mentioned a lot of resources that she uses and gained information from. So we do have them here on the screen, but don't worry, we will have these linked on our website support guide so you can access them for future uses. So thankful for Megan sharing all that information with us today. And it's important to note that there's information out there that you can access, whether like it's Megan's recording or all those resources that we just referenced there. So we do ask that you do a feedback survey so that we can continue to learn what topics are relevant, and also so we can provide the best trainings possible for you. So we are going to be having our next training on August 21st. We are really, really excited about this one, and we would love for you to join us. It's going to be one that you can learn how to participate in our resources on support guide. We're going to be launching a new tool on support guide as well. And it's going to be a tool that you can use for like not just that moment you can use it in your daily work. So we're really excited to provide that for y'all, and we'd love to see you there on August 21st. And feel free to invite as many people as possible to this one. It's going to be really relevant for the work that you're doing every day. Next slide, we'll have a QR code for that feedback survey. And additionally, Hannah has put the link in the chat. I will be sending out an email about upcoming sessions. We'll be launching the next 3 of our topics soon too, so you can see what is coming for the remainder of the year. You'll have a link to the support guide with the recording and slides. And again, we keep coming back to this, but your feedback with the survey is so important to us, and we really do take in consideration what you provide to us too. So please fill that out. We are thankful for the time that you spent with us today. Wish we could have hours upon hours to chat about all the different things that we have ideas about. Thank you so much, Megan, for sharing your wisdom and knowledge with us. Glad to have you here. If you have any questions, you can email the host, where we're doing this in partnership with RQE and CDSS. And we are so thankful that you were here today. Thank you for all the good work you're doing.